is here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
America, Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811. 877-381-3811. Let me just start the program by saying this. The sickening exploitation by the Democrats and the left for what's happened in Hawaii knows no bounds. They say this is an example of climate change. We need to do more. No, it's an example of an electrical wire, apparently, busting from its moorings and setting on fire the area around it that was dry, and individuals responsible for setting off the siren refusing to do so, some convoluted logic, and one individual responsible for supplying the water to the fire departments there, holding back. That's what's responsible for it. Climate change, which bases virtually every energy component on electricity. Like I said, the sickening irony is that it wasn't gasoline, it wasn't oil, it wasn't coal, it was electricity. And that this utility was using its funds to try and address and accommodate the radical left and their climate change agenda rather than shoring up existing energy delivery systems. Now that's what happened. As far as we know. It's nothing to do with climate change. Hawaii is hit with high winds. Hawaii is a group of islands in the middle of nowhere, the Pacific. They have hurricanes. They have all kinds of stuff going on out there, having nothing to do with climate change. And this is exactly why more people will die over the course of this climate change radical Marxist agenda, because rather than address the true problems, they just keep funding utopia, and utopia is going to kill us. Now, I want to move on. I told you months ago that this would catch fire, so to speak, and it is. This whole idea of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, people have been poo-pooing it. They're poo-pooing it because it's ridiculous. But what's not ridiculous is how people are destroying the Constitution while they claim to be defending it. How people are destroying law and order while they pretend to be defending it. And it's the same damn people over and over and over again. That is the Democrat Party Marxists and the willing accomplices who may not even identify with the Democrat Party, but wittingly or unwittingly, they are doing the dirty work. There's a piece in the Atlantic Monthly, I guess, the Atlantic, by Michael Ludig and Lawrence Tribe. Lawrence Tribe hasn't been right about anything in 20 years. And Michael Ludig, in my view, is off his rocker. And it's getting worse by the day. And they write this truly stupid piece in The Atlantic. And it goes on and on and on. They don't have the foggiest idea what Section 3 of the 14th Amendment means. Nothing. It's almost never used. It was clearly passed after the Civil War to prevent people who led the Confederacy from serving as officials in state and federal government. The name president doesn't even appear in the amendment, not even in that section. So first of all, you have to parse the word officers of the government in order to include the president, even though they mention senators, congressmen, state legislatures, state offices, but for some reason they leave out president. Don't worry, the originalists, so-called, like Michael Ludig, he'll find a way to get it in there. Then they say it was written with precision and thoroughness. Nothing thorough about it. There's nothing precise about it. Every one of those amendments, 13th, 14th, and 15th, are called Civil War amendments. The same Democrats who've tried to take the 14th Amendment and twist it into a power that doesn't exist for a president to ignore Congress, to ignore debt limits, and to pass his own budgets and to spend money in violation of Article 1, where the House has the power originally, are the same Democrats pushing this agenda out of the 14th Amendment. In other words, the 14th Amendment, they pour their hopes and their dreams into it, even though it has absolutely nothing to do with what they're talking about. Now, if you served in the Confederacy, you don't have to be indicted and charged with a crime and go in front of a court and all the rest of it. So it doesn't say anything about having to be convicted per se, of an insurrection. And so these knuckleheads say Trump doesn't even have to be convicted. In fact, he doesn't even have to be charged. It just is what it is. We'll figure it out. It's a disqualifying clause. Of course, there was an Amnesty Act that was passed a few years later, which pretty much neutralized the entire notion of the Insurrection Act, but it doesn't matter. Simon Chase, who was the Chief Justice of the United States, but writing in a really not very famous and not very well known, but one of the few cases addressing this issue, takes a different view than these two knuckleheads. And so what do they say? Oh, the case was poorly reasoned. They say the bottom line is that Donald Trump both engaged in insurrection and rebellion and gave aid and comfort to others engaging in such conduct within the original meaning of those terms as employed in Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. If the public record's accurate, the case is not even close. He's no longer eligible for office of the president or any other state or federal office covered by the Constitution. Now, who says he committed an act of insurrection or gave aid and comfort to an insurrection? Who says that? Well, members of the media have. The January 6th Stalinist Commission, which was appointed by the Democrat Speaker of the House, all the members, they say so. Even the rogue prosecutor does not say that. So where do we go to get an answer for that? Where do we go to get an answer for that? Nowhere. There's nowhere to go. Nowhere. Not the Supreme Court. Not Congress. Nowhere. Because it was never intended to apply to this kind of a situation or Donald Trump, where one party, and never Trumpers, get to say he committed acts of insurrection and aid and comfort to those who were in rebellion. Says who? Says they. And therefore they say, we will decide under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment whether Donald Trump is even qualified under our Constitution. And then you can hear a guy like this, Asa Hutchinson. Cut one, go.
I'm going to support the nominee of the party. I do not expect it to be Donald Trump. And that, I'm sure, question will come up in the debate to say tune for that. But what I point...
Wouldn't it be nice if the guy could actually speak? Could actually speak. Go ahead.
He's qualified to be the next president of the United States. And so you can't be asking us to support somebody that's not perhaps even qualified under our Constitution. And I'm referring to the 14th Amendment that a number of legal scholars said that he is disqualified because of his actions on
And so this is how it works. A number of legal scholars who hate Trump. Two morons from the Federalist Society. Two knuckleheads who haven't gotten anything right for decades. That is, Lawrence Tribe and J. Michael Ludig, plus the two morons from the Federalist Society. But there's many legal scholars who say, no, that's not correct. But Asa Hutchinson isn't going to comment on them. No, he's not going to talk about them. So Asa Hutchinson has lied. He's deceived you. He's no intention of supporting whoever the nominee is for the Republican Party to run for president. None. And this talk about the 14th Amendment started with Adam Schiff, as you might imagine. Here we have a piece in WUSA 9 CBS in the hours after the unsealing. The new federal charges against the former president. Google search data shows inquiries about Section 3 of the 14th Amendment have skyrocketed. And it goes on. House Democrat Representative David Cicilline, who resigned early to do something else, also sent a letter to colleagues asking them to join him in sponsoring legislation that disqualifies Trump from the presidency because of the 14th Amendment. And he references Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. But does the clause, they ask, apply to Donald Trump? Dates back to the Civil War. The intention was to prevent the president from allowing former leaders of the Confederacy who engaged in rebellion against the U.S. from holding office after they were granted presidential powers. These are the Civil War amendments. That's what they are. That's what they were intended for. Now, here's what it says. And you're going to have to stick with me for a few segments here as we walk through this, because what I try to do is give you a lesson about our history, economics, philosophy, but mostly the Constitution. It's your Constitution, and people are lying to you about it, including Republicans. No person shall be a senator or representative of Congress or elector of president and vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state, who previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States, or as a member of any state legislature, as an executive or judicial officer of any state, to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid and comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may, by a two-thirds vote of each house, remove such disability. This was aimed at the Confederates. Nothing more, nothing less. The making good on the debt of the United States that they've also used in the 14th Amendment had nothing to do with anything but the Civil War debt. Period. Several legal experts argue this probably doesn't apply to Trump. They point to three eligibility questions. Number one, notice Asa Hutchinson won't talk about this. Did Trump's conduct amount to engaging in an insurrection? Number two, who does this apply to in the government? Because when you look at impeachment, when they wrote that clause, they specifically talk about, among others, the president. In this 14th Amendment, they don't. They talk about an officer. Is the president an officer? Now, Robert Peck, founder president of the Center for Constitutional Litigation, told Verify, becomes whether Donald Trump engaged in the forbidden conduct. It will be up to Congress to determine if he's guilty of participating in insurrection. Congress did find Trump guilty of engaging in insurrection. That finding could ultimately result in a disqualification from holding office. But constitutional law experts say Trump would likely file a lawsuit to challenge the validity. So that's not really an answer. And here's part of the problem, and we'll continue this after the break. Do you notice where the Democrat Party and Trump haters are dragging this country every damn day? Into uncharted waters. A Manhattan DA bringing bogus indictments against a former president who's running for election in the opposite party. A phony special counsel who uses a documents matter in the Espionage Act, which was obviously intended to prevent espionage originally, as well as the January 6th grand jury charges against the president using the Klan Act, the Enron laws, and financial obstruction, had nothing to do with this. And then a Georgia DA who apparently thinks she's a federal prosecutor. That would be bad enough. And it turns out, did you know her father was a very active member of the Black Panthers, Mr. Producer? Did you know that? I hadn't known that. I just looked it up. It's on a Fox story. People keep sending me emails. I keep blowing them off. So finally I looked at one of them. Her father was a Black Panther. Now, those were considered domestic terrorists trying to overthrow the country. Isn't that ironic? And so I want to get into this a little bit further. Keep your eyes wide open, your ears wide open. This is coming. This is the latest campaign. It starts in the shadows and then works its way into the media. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
You know what helps me sleep well at night? Physical gold. I'm concerned about what the Biden administration is doing, and I've decided to learn more about gold IRAs to help me diversify. Did you know you can buy gold for your IRA or 401k? Gold can't be tracked like digital currency. No one has to know what you're buying, and there's no way to print more. My best resource for gold IRAs is Augusta Precious Metals. Their track record is no less than phenomenal. Learn why thousands of Americans are getting gold IRAs as part of their retirement portfolios, and you need to contact Augusta Precious Metals and get their free guide. I'm serious. Text Levin to 68592. Again, text LEVIN to 68592. Levin to 68592, or go to AugustaPreciousMetals.com. That's AugustaPreciousMetals.com. Text date and message rates may apply. Performance varies. Consult your financial professionals before making investment decisions and get risk disclosures at AugustaPreciousMetals.com. I only have a minute and a half, so I will pursue this more fully after the bottom of the hour, but I want you to think about something. If Donald Trump's able to get through this phalanx of almost 100 indictments against him in 4 different jurisdictions, led by 3 Democrat prosecutors, if he's able to get through that, win the Republican primary, and win the presidency, you have people saying he should have been disqualified from day one. If he's president, he should be disqualified as well. In other words, they would disenfranchise 70 to 75 million voters. And they think they're doing the country a favor? This fool Ludick and these other nut jobs? I'll be right back. You know what helps me sleep well at night? Physical gold. I'm concerned about what the Biden administration is doing, and I've decided to learn more about gold IRAs to help me diversify. Did you know you can buy gold for your IRA or 401k? Gold can't be tracked like digital currency. No one has to know what you're buying, and there's no way to print more. My best resource for gold IRAs is Augusta Precious Metals. Their track record is no less than phenomenal. Learn why thousands of Americans are getting gold IRAs as part of their retirement portfolios, and you need to contact Augusta Precious Metals and get their free guide. I'm serious. Text Levin to 68592. Again, text LEVIN to 68592. Levin to 68592, or go to AugustaPreciousMetals.com. That's AugustaPreciousMetals.com. Text date and message rates may apply. Performance varies. Consult your financial professionals before making investment decisions and get risk disclosures at AugustaPreciousMetals.com.
Mark Levin, a proud fanatic for the Constitution. Call him now at 877-381-3811.
I will get to Hunter Biden. I'll get to all that. But if I don't do this, nobody else is going to do it. Let's be honest. So I need to do it. And by the way, I hope you caught my little video on the social sites. The final first edition copy, you know, when you spend 16 months with this thing. And then in the mail, it finally shows up. It's the final version, the ultimate version, the first edition. You're kind of proud of it. And I'm more proud if you read it. The Democrat Party Hates America. We sent out, as I told you, some pre-publication copies a month or so ago. People are clearly reading it, these people we've sent it to. And they really are writing me some fantastic comments. I won't name them because they're just personal for the most part. And you can get your first edition pre-ordered copies. Now, we get a lot of people come on social media, which is why I don't pay a lot of attention to the comments, but I went through them briefly. 40% off. Well, I guess it's not selling. Ladies and gentlemen, we have over 50,000 pre-orders, Mr. Producer. Over 50,000 pre-orders. I don't even know where we are today, honestly. Now, the reason Amazon puts them 38%, or 40% off is because of volume. Amazon is about volume. They cut their prices, and it's the same with books. It's the same with my book. It's the same with bestsellers. They want to get them in and get them out. Get them in and get them out. That's how they make money. They have these massive warehouses, and they don't want stuff sitting in there. They move stuff out. That's why they're able to discount it more than most. And it's not just books, it's anything they sell. So when people say, well, I guess it's not really selling, actually with Amazon, early on, the bigger the discount, that indicates the book is selling because they're ordering as many books as they can that the publisher can produce. And they're moving them. And that's what's happening. When the book comes out on September 19th, those of you who are ordering it now will get it. Over 50,000 of you. Now, as for the publisher, when I say first edition, they only publish so many copies. Maybe it's a couple 100,000, maybe it's not, whatever it is. And when it's over, they'll print a second copy, printing, a third printing, a fourth printing. So the first edition, that is the first printing, is considered the most valuable. If you don't care about that, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal to me personally, but to some people it is, particularly if they're gifting it to somebody. So that's how that works. I don't want you to be misled by a bunch of left-wing Democrat punks that go on my side and everybody else, all conservative sites, and they mislead you. So at 40% off on Amazon, that tells you that they consider the pre-orders very successful. And so do I. And I want to thank those of you who've jumped in early. But now it's getting late. The book is released on September 19th. Today is August 21st. So we have 3.5, 4 weeks until the book comes out. I want to encourage you to get in the queue. So when it comes out that you get it. And we'll be talking about it bigly, in a big way. I'll be on with Hannity the Friday before it comes out. Of course, on my own Sunday show. And we've got a lot of attention we want to draw to it because, look, what matters to me most is the content of the book. That you read it. It's written for you. It's written for you and my radio audience and my TV audience and my Levin TV audience, the people who like my books. It's written for you. It's not written for the New York Times. It's not written for the Democrats. It's written for us to rally. And ideas make all the difference in the world. I'm destroying an idea right now. The idea is Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. How ridiculous. So let's return to this. There's a professor of law at Cleveland Marshall College of Law by the name of Doron Kalir. Gentlemen, And he told Verify, as presently written and as he interprets it, the highest office this section would apply to, insurrection or aiding and abetting, is a senator. The professor said the section says the rules apply to people in the following positions: a senator, a representative of Congress, or an elector of president and vice president. Notice right there, they could have said president or vice president. They didn't. An officer in any civil or military position. A person who holds any office, civilian or military. A person who has taken an oath as a member of Congress, or as an officer of the United States, or as a member of any state legislature. Professor Clear says it's interpreted the president does not hold an official station within the U.S. military, despite the title of commander-in-chief. They're not talking about him. That's a rank within the U.S. military, but gives the president authority to preside over some military operations. It's not a rank within the military. President's also not considered a civilian. So there's very strong support to the hypothesis that Donald Trump is not included in the list of persons on whom this will apply, he says. He says president is never specified in this section. Officers of the United States are. The question is whether the former president may be considered an officer of the United States for purposes of this section. There's no certified answer by the United States Supreme Court. Bakalier said the Supreme Court has spoken on this topic before. In 2010, Chief Justice John Roberts issued an opinion in the case of Free Enterprise Fund versus Public Company Accounting Oversight Board, which spoke directly to whether the president is considered an officer. Roberts, the Chief Justice of the United States, said, quote, the people do not vote for the officers of the United States. Rather, officers of the United States are appointed exclusively pursuant to Article 2, Section 2 procedures. It follows that the president, who is an elected official, is not an officer of the United States. In other words, only people in appointed positions are considered officers. Since the president is not appointed, he's not a senator, he's not a congressman, he's not a judge, he's not an elector, he wouldn't be considered an officer, according to that opinion. Clear said all of these eligibility requirements will likely be answered well ahead of the November election. But again, Tribe, who is a radical bomb thrower dressed up as a former professor, and he's losing it. Michael Ludig, who's, in my view, a basket case, absolutely unhinged. Just my opinion. It's too bad. I used to know him. Glad I don't anymore. Want nothing to do with the bastard. They're just taking the Constitution and twisting the hell out of it. Michael Ludig has thrown away over 40 years of his career. Over 40 years of his career because he cannot control his emotions and his passionate hate for Trump. And so what he's doing here about Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, in my view, is lying. As Lawrence Tribe has. Lawrence Tribe takes the 14th Amendment, twists it so the President of the United States can both offer his own budgets, raise taxes for his own budgets, and spend whatever he wants to. Does anyone think that's right? No. And so now we have local prosecutors in Manhattan, state prosecutors in Georgia, federal prosecutors all charging a president or a former president, a potential candidate. Never happened in American history. Well, that's because Trump. No, it's not. No, it's not. This is the same Democrat Party in the same Department of Justice, in the same places throughout the country that are destroying law enforcement, destroying law and order. These are the same people. The same people defending Hunter Biden and Joe Biden in Manhattan, in Atlanta, in Washington, D.C. That's who they are. They take control of the government, then they use the government to advance their causes. They have no respect for the Constitution. We learned that, didn't we? In full bloom and full sight right in front of our eyes 3 years ago. How do they go from CRT, a white supremacist society, trashing the founders of the country, lying about them in the 1619 Project, trashing the framers of the Constitution as trying to enshrine slavery, they say, and then they say they're the ones defending the Constitution in the country. You believe it? Don't believe it. They're liars. And fools like Ludig and Bill Barr and the rest of them, they're punks. They're helping to push the country into a disaster. Everybody likes to talk about deplaning and de-this and de-that. Deconstitutionalizing America. There's one for you. And they would just assume disenfranchise tens of millions of voters. They're pushing this country to the brink. They are. They are pushing this country to the brink. You're going to disenfranchise tens of millions of voters or would-be voters? The Democrat Party is going to choose the Republican nominee? How many Republicans do you think should Joe Biden be the nominee and get reelected? How many Republicans do you think are going to accept that? After what they've done to Trump, after what they've done to our voting system, after what they've done to law and order, after how they've protected the crooked Biden family, how many Republicans do you think are going to accept a Democrat Party win in 2024 should that occur? I mean, apart from the rhinos in Washington and New York, how many? Very few. Very few. They're already interfering and they want to go further. They've indicted Trump in a city. They've indicted Trump in a county. They've indicted Trump nationally, federally. And now they're telling us, and on top of that, he doesn't qualify for president. Because we took one of the civil rights amendments, we twisted it into a pretzel, and we have concluded, Professor Knucklehead over here and Judge Blowhard over here, and we have concluded that it's clear and concise at the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment prevents Trump from being president under any circumstances. I'll go stick it, you. And then, of course, the Democrat Party media, which was involved in every coup effort against Trump, and is, for the most part, never supported a Republican for president. The Democrat Party media agrees with him every step of the way. Meanwhile, Hillary Clinton's walking free. She should be in prison. Bill Clinton's walking free. He should be in prison. Joe Biden's shuffling around. He should be facing potential imprisonment when he leaves office. His son, oh my God. Well, we'll get into that a little bit when I return. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
You know what helps me sleep well at night? Physical gold. I'm concerned about what the Biden administration is doing, and I've decided to learn more about gold IRAs to help me diversify. Did you know you can buy gold for your IRA or 401k? Gold can't be tracked like digital currency. No one has to know what you're buying, and there's no way to print more. My best resource for gold IRAs is Augusta Precious Metals. Their track record is no less than phenomenal. Learn why thousands of Americans are getting gold IRAs as part of their retirement portfolios. And you need to contact Augusta Precious Metals and get their free guide. I'm serious. Text Levin to 68592. Again, text LEVIN to 68592. Levin to 68592 or go to AugustaPreciousMetals.com. That's AugustaPreciousMetals.com. Text date and message rates may apply. Performance varies. Consult your financial professionals before making investment decisions and get risk disclosures at AugustaPreciousMetals.com. It's also amazing how anxious all these lunatics want courts to make decision, that is the Supreme Court, but they hate the Supreme Court unless it rules the way they want it to rule. And of course, they're threatening that institution too. All the diabolical and evil activity you see taking place in this country right now, whether it's the open border, whether it's the assault on energy independence, the nuclear family and parental rights, the Catholic Church. I could go on and on and on. Censorship, the violations of the Bill of Rights, the violations of separation of powers, the anti-American sovereignty agenda, all of it. I don't even know why that's on, frankly. My computer. I guess I'll have to shut it. There, I did. Okay. Well, if we lose, that wins. If we lose, they double, triple, quadruple down. They'll make sure we can never win an election again. That's what they've been working on, while they claim to be standing up for elections. I have no time for the bobbleheads who have a hate-on for Trump. But let me say one other thing in a footnote. I have no time for any liars, including in our own party. And when you claim that Ron DeSantis trashed all the MAGA voters, and when you go back and read the entire transcript of what that man said and listen to the entire audio of what that man said, that is a lie. And I am not going to participate in radical Democrat-like lying just because I support one candidate or another, or you do. We went through this crap before in 2016. We have a real enemy out there. We have Republican rhinos, too, who are stabbing us in the back. The Asa Hutchisons, the Chris Christies, they want to get on that stage for one purpose and one purpose only. To stab us in the back. They're saboteurs. Trying to draw attention to themselves. They're two failed governors. Two failed governors. One has the biggest mouth on the face of the earth, and the other one can't speak English. Can't finish a sentence. He's our Joe Biden. Then you have Larry Hogan out there saying, well, if Trump's the nominee, we'll go third party. These are people who are disloyal, who are backstabbers, and who would just as soon see Joe Biden get elected president. And I fear some of that's going on around here. That if we don't get our man, then nobody's good enough. That's unacceptable to me. Period. You know, we have a home in Florida. I've told you this. We chose voluntarily to spend half our lives in Florida. And a lot of that is due to the governor of Florida and what he's done for the state of Florida. He's not a blank slate. Vivek. People are always taking off. He's at 6%. He has said some ridiculous things. Guy's a complete blank slate. But if he's the nominee, I'm voting for him. I'm voting for him. I'll be back. This segment of the podcast is exclusively sponsored by Pure Talk. Pure Talk offers great coverage and can save your family money on your wireless bill every single month. Go to puretalk.com to find the plan that's right for you. Thank you again for listening, and thank you so much for this sponsorship, Pure Talk.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811. 877-381-3811. You know, I'm getting a lot of texts and emails from a lot of old friends I haven't talked to in a while. Sebastian Gorka has asked to come on the program, and I'll bring him on. He wants to confront aspects of what Vivek Ramaswamy said. Alan West just got a text. He's a dear, dear friend. He's furious with what Vivek Ramaswamy... I haven't solicited a single one, Mr. Medusa. Said about Israel and the United States. And... I don't know. Pretty strange. And he called me over the weekend. I'm not going to say what we discussed because I'm not at liberty to do that. I gave him my feelings, and he understood. And I have my impression, which I will keep to myself for now, because, again, I'm not at liberty to do that. I'm not going to break confidentiality with discussion. I want to go on here for a second. So, the New York Times writes this long story over the weekend. Politico writes a long story. And somebody's feeding them information. Now, it's very interesting. See, for me, I want to know what the substance of the story is, but I'm also wondering, well, who's feeding what information to whom and why? So the New York Times points out that this guy, David Weiss, he was going to sign off on a deal where Hunter Biden didn't plead guilty to a thing. To nothing. Then the IRS whistleblowers came in and blew the lid off it. Now, I want to remind you that during that hearing with those two IRS whistleblowers, two very brave men, there wasn't a single Democrat on that committee that defended them, that wanted to hear what they had to say. Not one. And this Dan Goldman in New York is a cover-up artist and wanted to cover up for the Biden crime family. And I want you voters to remember that. That's Dan Goldman. He thinks he's representing the people in his district. Well, do the people in his district support this kind of criminality going on and having their congressman try and kill it? So, David Weiss is corrupt. Now, I want to educate people out there, particularly in the media. When they say he's a Trump appointee, David Weiss spent his entire legal career in Wilmington, Delaware. Joe Biden owns Wilmington, Delaware. He owns the state of Delaware. It's a tiny state with a little over 500,000 people. Nothing happens in Delaware without Joe Biden knowing about it. He's an iron fist. Mr. Producer, what the hell's going on with this thing? Hold on, America. There we go, once and for all. So, for a U.S. attorney to be appointed in the state of Delaware by Donald Trump, first of all, he has so much going on when he first becomes president. It's probably not something he's really thinking about. Secondly, the head of presidential personnel at the time was John Boehner's guy. They made a huge mistake, did the Trump administration, of putting John Boehner's guy at the head of presidential personnel. Huge mistake. So they're probably cutting deals with Biden. Number three, if Biden doesn't support who Trump nominates, then Biden will block the nomination, effectively killing it. So when they say it's a Trump appointee, the media are lying and the Democrats are lying. Yes, Trump went through the mechanism, but everybody understands, who understands how this works, that he's Biden's guy. He just happens to be a Republican, but he's Biden's guy. And that's been proven. If he's not Biden's guy, it's a funny way of showing it, of not showing it. So he was prepared to cut a deal in which the gun violations, the tax violations, all the other violations would be scrubbed. They were just trying to figure out the language. And this New York Times piece talks about scores of emails going back and forth and pages of negotiations and discussions. And they were working with each other to come up with the proper verbiage and to try and use passive words rather than active words, and to slip it into the deal that they wanted to slip past the judge. Two things worked here: the whistleblowers and the judge. That's why when you have a judge like, I believe she pronounces it Noriel, but the Wilmington judge, who's obviously an honest judge. She's not a partisan hack like the judge that's handling Trump's so-called January 6th case. And there's no evidence of any partisanship in her background. No statements from the bench trashing, convicted individuals, lecturing them the way Judge Chitnick did, whatever the hell her name is. She doesn't do that. The whistleblower saved the day. The judge saved the day. As a result, somebody's feeding information to the New York Times that is exposing this entire racket. Now, why would the New York Times run with this? Because somebody at some point is going to expose this. The New York Times has been in such cover-up mode for the Bidens, for the Clintons, for the Democrat Party, and for themselves over the century, and certainly the decades and in the past few years. That's what's going on here. Then Politico. Politico points out that Hunter Biden's lawyer, a guy named Chris Clark, quite the thug, if you ask me. Of course, he won't be disbarred or investigated by any Democrat city bar committee. He said, look, you guys prosecute Hunter. I'm going to call the president to the stand as a material fact witness. And of course, what did he say? What did he mean by that? That President Joe Biden will be exposed for the crook that he is. And so they crumbled. The prosecutors at the Department of Justice crumbled. Again, what did the whistleblowers say? They thought they had a deal with the prosecutors at the Department of Justice, and then all of a sudden they killed it. They wouldn't say why, but they killed it. And then they were getting orders from the Department of Justice, obstructing their further investigation, preventing them from getting what they wanted to get. Remember the assistant U.S. attorney? Remember her? She wouldn't agree to a search warrant. Said it wouldn't look right. All of this is being orchestrated by Monaco, the Deputy Attorney General, and Garland, the Attorney General. They're in charge of the Department of Justice. None of this can happen without their say-so. None of it. This would be the same Monaco and Garland who are overseeing the charges against Donald Trump. The same corrupt minds, the same ones, who are defended by retired Judge Ludig, by former Attorney General Barr. They're defending the same mob operation because they hate Trump. And they lie about what a great threat he is to democracy. Yeah, it's terrible. Been awful. It's amazing. Barr was the Attorney General of the United States. Tell me, Bill, all the time you were Attorney General under Trump, what laws did he violate? None. I assume Barr would have resigned if he thought he had. He was in charge of the Department of Justice. But now he's trying to get his cred back inside the Beltway because that's where he lives, pretty much. So now we have Politico saying that Chris Clark basically threatened the Department of Justice that he was going to expose Joe Biden. He was going to question him about the laptop, question him about meetings, question him about phone calls, question him about all these things. Wow. Can't have that. Meanwhile, we're going to appoint a special counsel now to investigate Hunter, now that the whole thing fell apart. Now that the whole thing's been exposed. And we're going to appoint the corrupt U.S. Attorney, David Weiss. He'll be the special counsel. Because we need a fresh look at this. Even though you're supposed to appoint somebody outside the government, as we've discussed over and over again, He picks the very guy inside the government who's been sabotaging from within the American people, the rule of law. 2 major statute of limbs have already fallen. The major tax evasion case and the potential bribery case. They're already gone. To this day, Hunter Biden has not been charged with anything. There's no indictment. To this day, I'm not even aware that there's a grand jury. What have I been telling you for months and months and months? Finally, some of the legal analysts on our favorite network have figured it out. Took them a little while, but they're there now, and that's good. This has nothing to do with Hunter Biden. None of it. It's Joe Biden. Joe Biden's the ringmaster. Joe Biden's the crook. Joe Biden has spent his entire life as a liar, an overachiever, because politics puts some of the worst people in powerful positions, like Joe Biden. And there he is, shuffling around. He's got his Politburo running the government, pushing his country over the edge. He's got his Never-Trumper supporters all over the place. These Never-Trumpers don't understand they're really never constitutionalists and patriots. They're just not. There's no way Bill Barr can be said to be a patriot or a constitutionalist anymore. No way. In the face of all this. So now the media are also, just like the Department of Justice, they move around doing everything they can to trash this Judge Cannon in Florida. Why? Because she's an honest judge. Because she's not part of the party operation, like the judges in Washington, D.C. She has some questions about venue. Well, that's not a legitimate question. It's a 100% legitimate question. She has some questions about how Trump's supposed to defend himself without being able to see classified information. Seems pretty important to me. These are legitimate questions any judge would have. Any judge. At the same time, they're doing everything they can to protect Biden. They're doing everything they can to destroy who they believe will be the Republican nominee, or they don't want to be the Republican nominee. Or maybe they do with a lot of damage. Who knows? But they're singularly focused. And in the case of Trump, it's funny how they all want trials right now. Right now. No reason to delay this, particularly the January 6th one. Why? So they can then use their Section 3, 14th Amendment argument. And I want to ask you what I asked an hour ago. There's tens of millions of Americans who either voted for Trump, might want to vote for Trump, would vote for him in the future. You're going to disenfranchise them? Because a couple of morons got together and decided that Section 3 of the 14th Amendment blocks Trump from even running? As they sit in their basements and they write this stupid stuff? They don't even realize the consequences of what they're doing and saying? It's unbelievable. And do these clowns think it'll end with Donald Trump? Does Bill Barr think that his blunder busting all over the TV, that the arguments he's making are going to just stop with Donald Trump? Of course not. And I shall remind you that it's Bill Barr who gave all this authority to the U.S. Attorney in Wilmington, David Weiss, in the first place. No judgment whatsoever on Barr's part. He always has an excuse. Always has an excuse. But he's the one who appointed this guy. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
You know what company's looking for you when they actually upgrade your service and don't charge you for it? This is great news, and for new and current Pure Talk customers. Pure Talk just added data to every plan and is including a mobile hotspot with each one, with no price increase whatsoever. Now, if you've considered Pure Talk before but haven't pulled the trigger, take a look again. Just $20 a month for unlimited talk, text, and now 50% more 5G data, plus mobile hotspot. Just $20 a month, folks. This is why I love Pure Talk. That also happens to be veteran-owned and only hires the best customer service team right here in America. Most families are saving almost $1,000 a year while enjoying the most dependable 5G network in America. Just go to puretalk.com and enter promo code Levin Podcast to make the switch to Pure Talk, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month. Again, go to puretalk.com, enter promo code LEVIN Podcast, and make the switch to my cell phone company, Pure Talk, today. Anybody and everybody who sees Chris Christie should go up to him and say, Chris, you're the coward. You won't even go on Mark Levin's radio show. You're a coward. Coward. I want to play for you the legal analyst for CNN, Ellie Honey. Cut 3, go.
Yeah, Kate, and I think both sides are far off base in their requests. 2026 is sort of obviously way too far out.
Sorry, what he's talking about is the trial date in Florida on the documents case. Go ahead.
2026. I think that's a vast overreach by Donald Trump's team. But on the other side of the coin, asking for trial to start in January of 2024, as DOJ has done, is also not just unrealistic, but really gets close to infringing on Donald Trump's right to prepare for a trial. He's the one who has a constitutional interest here. He's the one whose liberty at stake. And I think his lawyers in their submission make a powerful argument that we cannot even physically get through the 11 million documents that we are in the process of being given by DOJ between now and January. And they don't have to just sort of read through those documents. They have to analyze them. They have to prepare their own defense. They have to file motions. So I think both of these dates are really out of bounds, and I think it's going to be up to the judge to find a middle ground. Of course, the big question is, will that middle ground be before or after the 2024 election?
The middle ground is after the 2024 election. You were 90% there. You were almost there. Almost there. Just barely there. 11 million documents, 9 months of video, and according to the Department of Injustice under Biden and Jack the Ripper Smith, they can get through that. They only need 5 months. It's not a matter of getting through it. You have to study it. You have to prepare arguments. You got to make your own witness lists. You have to you prepare exculpatory information. And by the way, Trump's supposed to do all this and his lawyers while they're charged in 3 other districts. I'll be right back. You know what company's looking for you when they actually upgrade your service and don't charge you for it? This is great news, and for new and current Pure Talk customers. Pure Talk just added data to every plan and is including a mobile hotspot with each one, with no price increase whatsoever. Now, if you've considered Pure Talk before but haven't pulled the trigger, take a look again. Just $20 a month for unlimited talk, text, and now 50% more 5G data, plus mobile hotspot. Just $20 a month, folks. This is why I love Pure Talk. That also happens to be veteran-owned and only hires the best customer service team right here in America. Most families are saving almost $1,000 a year while enjoying the most dependable 5G network in America. Just go to puretalk.com and enter promo code Levin Podcast to make the switch to Pure Talk, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month. Again, go to puretalk.com, enter promo code LEVIN Podcast, and make the switch to my cell phone company, Pure Talk, today.
Mark Levin, the thunder on the right. Call in now, 877-381-3811.
One of my buddies out there who I haven't talked to in a while, he contacts me and he says, Mark. No, actually, Mark. I love this guy, Sebastian Gorka. Seb wants to come on because something's under his skin. Seb, what's going on, my brother?
Well, I'm on vacation, great one, and I see a tweet of yours, and I look it up, and lo and behold, this guy who I liked, who I had on the show for an hour recently, who was the only guy in the GOP primary who went to Miami the day the president was arraigned, and then Vivek gives these 2 interviews back-to-back on Israel, and I saw your reaction, and I thought, I know this is close to your heart. I know I'm on vacation, but I got to sound off. This is an outrage, what he said.
He said that Israel needs to learn to stand on its own 2 feet. And he said his goal is to expand the Abraham Accords, and once that's done, integrate Israel into the rest of the Middle East. Israel needs to stand on its own 2 feet, and then stop providing it with military support. And I said, well, wait a minute, we're giving $6 billion to Iran, Israel $3.8 billion.
Yeah.
And they have a very important role in our national security and our diplomacy and so forth. Why, if you just walk away, how do you just walk away from these allies? He said the same thing about Taiwan, that once they teach us how to make computer chips, then we leave them. Well, why would they do that?
So here's a kind of, flip it on its head. How about not this pie in the sky of Israel should integrate into the Middle East? How about the rest of the Middle East should integrate into Israel? We're talking about a country of 9 million human beings, surrounded mostly by nations that have wanted to destroy it until President Trump came along. I was on the ground floor in the White House when he came up with the Abraham Accords, and God bless him, the State Department was telling President Trump, oh, you can't have peace in the Middle East until you recognize Palestine. And he said, why? Because, and he said, no, we're going to work with Israel. We're going to have Jared travel out to the Middle East. And what does he do? He brings a peace accord with the UAE, with Bahrain, with Sudan, with Morocco, things we were told were impossible, and now we want to just, throw them to the lions? We're talking about $3 billion a year. How much have we given to Ukraine by comparison? Maybe 30 times that. But this is his priority. And then the most asinine thing of all, Vivek was a smart guy, but clearly on national security issues, he needs to do some 101. He says we end the aid to Israel by 2028, the only truly functioning democracy in the Middle East. When you're going up against President Trump, you've got to provide some smart foreign policy ideas. You can't have ideas that suck, and I'm sorry, Mark, this is just really stupid.
And it's strange you would focus on this. I mean, yeah. Why would you focus on our ally? How about more talk about Iran and what they're doing? We're giving them $6 billion and how their whole oil industry has been rebuilt and all the rest. Shouldn't that be your focus?
Look, for me, it was the proudest moment for me in the White House. I write about it in the War for America's Soul when President Trump called me and Bannon into the Oval. He called us his heavies, and we had the rest of the cabinet arrayed against us. People who said, you can't kill the JCPOA, you can't kill. People like H.R. McMaster saying, Tillerson saying, you can't kill the Iran deal. President Trump said, okay, Steve, okay, Seb, explain to us why the Iran deal is bad for America and threatens American citizens. And we gave our pitch, and what did President Trump do? He killed the Iran deal. That is a state that actually sponsors terrorism. It is the greatest state sponsor of terrorism. And it's weird that he wants to cut off aid to the country that is killing terrorists in the Middle East, but not the one that's actually sponsoring terrorism. I like the guy. He's smart in business. He went down to Miami to stand with the president, but this makes no sense. Even if you're America first, you understand that our closest, our best ally in the Middle East is Israel. And by the way, Vivek, our aid to Israel and to the Arab nations is a function of the 1978 Camp David Accord. So what, are you just going to unilaterally rewrite history by yourself? It just makes no sense, Mark.
I'm going to play something for you, Sebastian, from Chris Christie today with reporters. Cut 7, Mr. Producer, go.
He's a coward. There's no other conclusion to come to that he's both afraid of me and he's afraid of defending his record. And if I had his record, I'd be nervous about showing up too. I mean, let's face it, guys. By Wednesday, he's going to be out on bail in 4 different jurisdictions. That really? When are we going to stop thinking that's normal? When are we going to allow our country to understand again that nominating someone who's out on bail in 4 jurisdictions is not a winning formula?
All right, so Seb, listen to this fool. He's out on bail. he doesn't dare question what's happened to the man, why he should never have been in position to be out on bail, what's happening to the Department of Justice, these prosecutors, these Democrats. Doesn't even want to talk about any of that. He just says he's out on bail. Mr. Bridgegate here. And it's just he's a coward. This guy will not appear on my radio show. We have tried 10 times to get this SOB on my radio show. Even my favorite rhino, Hugh Hewitt, he said to him over and over, why won't you go on Mark Levin's show? And he blows it off, doesn't dare attack me, and moves on. Why? Because I know how to deal with bullies. That's why. And he won't come on the show. What do you make of that?
Well, look, he's not only a coward, he's an obese clown. And to say that about, he's out on bail, he actually used to be a prosecutor. And you think it's okay? You're on the side of the permanent bureaucracy, the deep state. You served with honor inside the DOJ. You know what it has become today, the most corrupt part of federal government. To have a man who was president 2 years ago facing 91 indictments, more than 300 years in prison. Why? Because he could defeat the current incumbent in the White House. And this fat, disgusting disgrace of a man, the only place he gives interviews is CNN and MSNBC. That's all you need to know. He says he's a conservative.
Come on now, it's on my buddy Hugh's show. I mean, Hugh's our buddy. We know. Well. Let me ask you this. I started a group, Sebastian Gorka, called Fatties United, or FU. And I've offered him an honorary position on FU, and he won't even embrace that. I got a whole plaque ready for him.
Accept your offer?
No, I was going to say, FU Chris Christie. I've got it here. It's all ready to go. But it takes me 10 minutes. So we can't get him on FU. Anyway, I think, why is this guy in the race other than to torpedo a couple of these Republicans?
Well, look, ego. Yeah, there's a Hungarian saying, these are the kind of guys who, if they jumped off their ego onto their IQ, they'd be committing suicide. And it's the same with most of these clowns. And also, he's a sore loser. This guy who brown-nosed, who tried to, and I was there. I was on the presidential transition.
He wanted to be Attorney General, right?
Yes, and he was supposed to be running the transition team. He was never there. He didn't run anything. We had to bring in consultants to run it in his stead, and he thought that President Trump would kiss his ring and give him a cabinet position. He didn't, and now it's like the crazy girlfriend who never was your girlfriend but is bitter at you for the rest of your life because you never went out with her. That's who Chris Christie is.
Uh-oh. Chris Christie's like a bitter girlfriend?
Who never actually got to go out with you but thought they were your girlfriend. You know, the crazy ex?
Goodness.
You know the crazy ex? He's like the crazy ex.
Does that explain the man breasts? I don't know. What are you trying to say?
I take the fifth. I take the fifth on that.
All right, my brother. May I ask you basically what general area you're in vacationing?
The God's country, New Hampshire, away from it all. No internet, nothing, in the middle of the forest, but sometimes checking my Twitter account and your Twitter account.
All right, brother. Well, tell everybody about your book.
The War for America's Soul, with an exclusive interview with President Trump on what they're trying to do, this party that is not your party, not the party of JFK or Scoop Jackson, has become a radical party that hates America, what it's going to take to defeat them. We talk about what the role of all Americans are in 2024, so it's The War for America's Soul. Get it right now at sebgorka.com.
I hate to do this to you. I only have a minute. What do you make of all the... I call them pseudo-conservatives, who back Putin? Now, they deny it, but they clearly do. What do you make of that?
This horrifies me as the child of someone who escaped from a communist political prison. I remember the good old days, and I'm sure you do, Mark, when every conservative hated a KGB officer, a bloodthirsty thug like Putin. It's sad. People have become victims to conspiracy theories. I get cynicism after Iraq. I get cynicism after Afghanistan. But to think the KGB killer is a good guy and saving Christianity, you're smoking Hunter Biden's crack pipe if you believe that.
And that the president of Ukraine, who lost members of his family in the Holocaust, is a neo-Nazi?
Yeah, the Jewish president of Ukraine
Come
is
on.
running a Nazi state. It beggars belief. Beggars belief.
All right, brother. Well, we got to talk more often. You take care of yourself and enjoy yourself.
Okay. Best to your bride. God bless.
Same there. God bless. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
You know what company's looking for you when they actually upgrade your service and don't charge you for it? This is great news, and for new and current Pure Talk customers. Pure Talk just added data to every plan and is including a mobile hotspot with each one, with no price increase whatsoever. Now, if you've considered Pure Talk before but haven't pulled the trigger, take a look again. Just $20 a month for unlimited talk, text, and now 50% more 5G data, plus mobile hotspot. Just $20 a month, folks. This is why I love Pure Talk. That also happens to be veteran-owned and only hires the best customer service team right here in America. Most families are saving almost $1,000 a year while enjoying the most dependable 5G network in America. Just go to puretalk.com and enter promo code Levin Podcast to make the switch to Pure Talk, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month. Again, go to puretalk.com, enter promo code LEVIN Podcast, and make the switch to my cell phone company, Pure Talk, today. All right, folks. I have to be honest with you. I'm putting on a pretty good face tonight. I'm kind of down, Mr. Producer. So we have our little babies, Ronnie and Toby, our two puppies. They've been with us now, I guess, since March. And they are just absolutely joyful. They are fantastic. Each has their own personality. But, try as we might, we cannot seem to house train them. Now, my wife Julie and I have house trained many dogs over the course of our lives. And they can get a little rough with each other, although they don't mean anything by it, because they're inseparable. When you separate one from the other, they get very upset. So we walk them together and feed them together and all the rest of it. But then again, I don't want any one of them to get hurt by accident. I could be overstating it, but I'm very careful about these things. So we found a lovely lady who's a trainer by reputation, excellent reputation. We've met her a couple times. And so tomorrow, Mr. Producer, in America, they're going to camp. They call it camp. I don't know what the hell to call it, although I'm very trepidatious about this. I don't like being away from them that long. It's bad enough when I have to go to Florida, but I don't like being away from them that long. But if we can make some progress, you know, the quality of their life will be a lot better. Their lives, I should say. And I know many of you have been through it. But look, this is family. And these two dogs had a rough upbringing. One of them was raised at a puppy mill. We got him at 5 months. He spent 4 months in a cage, and when they rescued him, he was filthy, you know, full of stuff. The other guy, Ronnie, the bigger one, they found him roaming on the streets of Puerto Rico. God knows what happened to him. Sweet as can be. And this is kind of what you would expect, right? So, every dog has their own psychological issues. Some of them don't have any psychological issues, just like human beings. It's their environment, their experience, their DNA, it all affects them. So anyway, we took them to the groomers today. They're groomed, they're beautiful, and they're happy. And then when I drop them off, they're going to say, "Dad, are you coming back? Are you going to come back?" This is what kills me. Another person, another family? How many more times do we have to do this? Just this time. And then I'm not letting you out of my sights again. Don't you get sick of being put on hold? I'm telling you, We've had to deal with Comcast back in Florida again. Do you know we're still dealing with it? Apparently the people who put in the new cable, Mr. Producer, you're the one who reminded me of this, they have to put it in again. Because they didn't do it right. All I'm trying to do is watch TV and work my computer. That's it. I'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. I want to remind you folks that how long ago would it be? Let's see. Well, more than half a century ago. Actually, a little less than 60 years ago. The Republican Party nominated Barry Goldwater as the presidential nominee. He was attacked by a phalanx of Republican senators and governors and operatives because old Barry actually believed in the Constitution and individual liberty. He believed in these things. But he was sabotaged by the governor of New York, Nelson Rockefeller. He was sabotaged by the governor of Pennsylvania, another Republican, Scranton. He was sabotaged by Republicans all over the country who'd been part of the ruling class. Some even had claimed to be conservatives. But Barry just went too far. Barry went too far. He was a conservative and he actually meant it. He meant it. They did everything they could to destroy Barry Goldwater because they didn't want the Republican Party in controlled by this guy. Didn't matter that he was running for president. Didn't matter that he was running against one of the great American racists and segregationists of all time, Lyndon Baines Johnson. Didn't matter. If they couldn't control the Republican Party and the Republican nominating process, and if here's Barry Goldwater, who out-organized them, won more delegates, won fair and square, they were going to destroy him regardless. And that's what they did. It would have been an uphill battle anyway, since Kennedy had been assassinated and his vice president became president, and you had all that going on, but the ruling class establishment Republicans hated Goldwater. They just hated him, tried to destroy him. And so, when you listen to Larry Hogan on CNN yesterday, or you listen to Bill Barr, or you listen to Chris Christie, or any of these people, they are the Nelson Rockefellers and the Bill Scrantons, and there's so many more, the Jacob Javitzes of our time. That's who they are. Now, they'll claim to be conservatives. Most of them have long ties to the Bushes, or supported Ford in 76, or what have you. Karl Rove is another one. It's either their way or the highway. They will not tolerate a successful challenge. They try to do the same thing to Reagan, too, by the way. They put stories about how he was stupid, how he was a warmonger, you don't want him near the nuclear button, that he didn't understand the Soviet Union, and on and on and on. The third greatest president in American history, behind Washington and Lincoln, in my view. No better. Now, I want you to listen to Larry Hogan on CNN yesterday. You've got these people who seek out these networks that hate you. Same people that I've already mentioned and more. Cut 8, go.
Your group, No Labels, is preparing a break glass in case of emergency option, basically to try to run a third-party ticket in 2024. And you argue voters are really dissatisfied with both Trump and with President Biden.
Can we stop right there? Then let the voters decide if they're really dissatisfied with Trump and Biden. I don't even understand this argument. The voters don't want either. Well, then don't vote for them. So we'll come to the rescue. No labels. Not no labels. You're all libs. I mean no labels. You're libs. Not a conservative among you. Go ahead.
If Trump does get the nomination here, is No Labels going to go through with this plan to run a third-party candidate? And would you serve on that ticket if they asked you to?
Well, look, I think we're at a point.
Okay, first of all, this guy couldn't get a dog catcher outside of Maryland. Serve on the ticket? This is Cassie Hunt, CNN. They're such low IQ, dumb people, and yet predictable. Go ahead.
Where 2/3 of the people are not interested in voting for the Republican or Democratic.
You're talking about polls. When the voting is over, and one or both of them win, that's the way it works, Governor. That's the way it's supposed to work. We don't poll people into office or out of office. And same with majoritarianism. We have a process. The Republicans have a process. Each state decides how they're going to choose electors. And the Democrats have a process. So this guy from Maryland, who cannot get the nomination of the Republican Party, is telling everybody that if his kind of candidate doesn't get the nomination, then they reject the American people, and we got to go third party, where I can assure you they're not going to get 50% of the vote, so they don't even make any sense. Anyway, go ahead.
Nominees. And, an overwhelming majority of people are completely fed up with politics. They think Washington is broken. And so even though this normally is not something that we consider and talk about seriously because it hasn't happened in the past, this is something that could happen. We have to wait and see how this campaign plays out. We're a long way off. I don't know that at this point in time that Trump and Biden are going to do it. But if Trump and Biden are the nominees, it's very likely that No Labels will get access to the ballot and will offer an alternative.
You know, it's like Lisa Murkowski. She changes the voting system in Alaska so she can't lose. Basically, 2 general elections, put it bluntly, so the Democrats can vote for the Republican. And now the people have really spoken, you see. And now this guy, Trump's the nominee. Yes, it's likely they'll go third party. So why should any Republican support any of these people? Why not just be an independent now? Give it up. So the Larry Hogan types were the Nelson Rockefeller types, the Bill Scranton types, the Jacob Javits types, and liberals, whether they're in the Republican Party or the radical leftists, whether they're in the Democrat Party, they have no loyalty except to themselves. To themselves. At least with the Democrat Party, they have loyalty to the party because the party is the instrument through which they gain power, keep power, and exercise power. But when a guy like Larry Hogan gets elected, he doesn't build up the Republican Party. He doesn't empower the Republican Party. He doesn't make any permanent political changes like DeSantis did in Florida, which is why they hate DeSantis. So they hate anybody who's conservative, hate them. They hate anybody who has taken on the ruling class and defeated them, like Trump. They hate them. They keep talking about January 6th and how upset they are. Bill Barr was going to leave before January 6th. It had nothing to do with January 6th. Chris Christie left a long time before January 6th. He didn't get what he wanted. He wanted to be Attorney General. And he's been conspiring against Trump ever since. He's disgruntled. They're all disgruntled. I've never written a book about anybody I've ever worked for. I've never gone public about anybody I've ever worked for, whether I like them or not. Because I was raised to have character and to have some class. You got a problem? Just go away quietly. General MacArthur could do it. So can you lame brains out there. Not you. You know who I mean. These people. These people. So they destroyed Barry Goldwater from within. They tried to destroy Reagan from within. Constantly. He overcame it and overcame it in a big way. But they didn't learn from Reagan. Reagan won 2 massive electoral landslides, popular vote and electoral college. In comes George H. Bush, and what does he say? Kinder, gentler. Kinder, gentler. And we keep losing the popular vote. Kinder, gentler, kinder, gentler. He was the last one to win a significant percentage, I think 53, 54%, whatever, because it was Reagan's third term. But after that, we've never done it. Kinder, gentler. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Our friend Julie Kelly's with us. We've given her the Mark Levin Journalism Award. The Pulitzer Prize, of course, has been badly stained by the Washington Compost and the New York Slimes. Julie, you've written another blockbuster, and you've got your Declassified with Julie Kelly on Substack column. What did you find here? And it's very important.
It is, Mark. It's just another example of the weaponization, exploitation of the law to punish January 6th defendants. We already know that they have weaponized a law like obstruction of an official proceeding, which was the post-Enron, tampering with witnesses and evidence. Now slap that against more than 300 J6ers, a felony charge punishable by up to 20 years in prison. By the way, one of the counts Jack Smith has against Donald Trump. But what we have here is another example of excessive sentences. So what the appellate court in D.C. just did was vacate the sentence, what they called a split sentence, for one of the defendants who pleaded guilty to parading. Now, Mark, this is a Class B misdemeanor petty offense that the Chief Judge Beryl Howell admitted in 2021 that federal courts don't even deal with. Yet this is the most common charge against January 6ers. They're dragged into federal court in Washington, D.C., and most of them have pleaded guilty to this. Well, then what the judges decided to do was impose not just jail time for this petty offense, but added probation on top of it. In many cases, 2 to 3 years, so it would run through the 2024 election. Well, that's a no-no. As you know, Mark, as an attorney, you either incarcerate, especially for a misdemeanor, you can choose jail time, or you choose probation. And then if you choose jail time, you could use supervised release. Well, what these judges in Washington, D.C. did, including Beryl Howell, including Judge Tanya Chutkin, the judge handling the Trump case, is violate sentencing guidance and impose jail time and probation. This will affect at least 60 cases, people who have already served their jail time, by the way, but hopefully now we'll go back to the appellate court, have their sentences vacated as well, or the judges just turn around and change their sentencing agreement to begin with.
Your point to the public is you don't get to do both. It's one or the other. So you don't sentence somebody to prison and then say, and by the way, on top of that, you've got blah, blah, probation. But the judges did that in Washington, D.C. Can you tell us, in addition to the 2 judges you mentioned, 2 Obama appointees, what other judges have done that off the top of your head? Royce Lamberth,
don't have
right?
The judges. Yes, he did.
Your article mentions Royce Lamberth. I'll tell you why this bothers me. I've known Royce Lamberth for decades. He came out of the Reagan Justice Department. I believe he was head of the Civil Division, but he'd been an assistant U.S. attorney and so forth. And prior to January 6th, he was a tough judge, but he was a very fair judge. You've been tracking this closer than anybody. I don't find him to be a fair judge at all anymore, do you?
No, he's actually one of the worst judges, unfortunately. In fact, there's a man from Florida right now who's on the lam who has evaded. He left his home in Naples, Florida last Monday. He was convicted by Judge Lamberth in a bench trial where reportedly Judge Lamberth, 81 years old, was falling asleep, needed help up to his chair from his clerks, and after a bench trial convicted this man of several offenses, including obstruction of an official proceeding. DOJ came back and asked for 14 years in prison for this man. Jeez. He never even went inside the building. But Judge Lamberth convicted him of assault on police with a deadly or dangerous weapon, accusing him, DOJ, of spraying pepper spray at police. Now, that's a common occurrence in Washington, D.C. I mean, you have carjackers who get off the hook for that. But here he convicted him of this crime and other crimes. DOJ wanted 14 years in prison, and this man left his house last Monday, left a note basically, saying I'm not going to go out this way, and they still haven't found him a week later. Judge Lamberth is one of the toughest convictors and sentencers by far, also keeping people under pretrial detention, nonviolent offenders.
Is this the same Department of Justice that came to the defense of the two Ivy League lawyers who threw a Molotov cocktail into a police car thinking that the cops might be in there, and they were arrested, and then the Department of Justice asked the federal judiciary up there, the federal court, to let them free, that they'd served enough, that they didn't have a bad background. So they didn't even finish their sentence of, I think, maybe a year or two or whatever it was. There's not really equal justice, is there? That's just a bunch of crap, isn't it?
There isn't, and I'm telling you, these sentences, and I'm very happy to see the D.C. Circuit vacate this man's sentence and really condemn not just Judge Lamberth, but all the judges and particularly the government for misrepresenting in their sentencing recommendations that they could allow for this split sentence. And the judges on the circuit court said, no, this is not true. You intentionally misread it. They actually went through this funny sentence diagramming to explain to the government and to the judges how this was not allowed. Now, Mark, there were judges on the D.C. District Court, Judge Dabney Friedrich, for example. A few of them did bring up the fact that they were not allowed to impose jail time and probation. So they rejected the government's recommendation when they came forward with those sentencing memorandum. But then you had other judges, of course, Beryl Howell, who is the one who forced DOJ to start doing that. She then sentenced at least 9 defendants to jail time and probation. This is the chief judge of the D.C. District Court, knowing that she was violating federal sentencing guidance so they could inflict more punishment on January 6th misdemeanors and also surveil them through the 2024 election, which is what Judge Lamberth and Judge Hogan, another Reagan appointee, admitted in open court that, yes, we need the government to keep an eye on you through the 2024 election.
Judge Thomas Hogan is another disaster. And he said what you're saying. He said to cover the next election to make sure that you do not fall victim to false gods again. Who the hell do these judges think they are speaking like this to other people?
I mean, I hear it all the time. It's really terrifying.
All right, I want to hold you over. I want to pursue this further. This is not a joke. Number one, they're using the Exxon statute, which is on thin ice against these individuals as they are against Trump on obstruction. Number two, they're sentencing them for effectively twice for the same so-called offense. I'll be right back.
The Mark Levin Show, live and national at 877-381-3811.
We're here with Julie Kelly. Judge Justin Walker, writing for the majority on the circuit court, as you write, smack down the Department of Justice and Judge Lamberth in no uncertain terms. Here's what he writes. Probation and imprisonment are alternative sentences. They cannot generally be combined. So the district court could not impose both for Little's petty offense. A misdemeanor They throw him in prison for, I guess, 60 days or so, and then put this probation on top of it. And, you know, Julie Kelly, these district court judges had to know exactly what they were doing, didn't they?
Well, yes, because what happened is, I explained in my piece on my Substack, is the government was sort of the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office, which throughout 2021 was under the leadership of an acting AG until Matthew Graves, the man who's there now, took over. DOJ recognized that they couldn't do this, which is why they did it. Until Beryl Howell had her tirade in October of 2021, right before Matthew Graves took over, the DOJ was only recommending either home detention, home incarceration, maybe a year or two of probation. After she grilled this prosecutor as to why the government was not bringing the split sentence, then all of a sudden, lo and behold, Matthew Graves takes over, the Biden appointee, and in December is the first recommendation for 4 months in jail and 3 years probation on this petty offense. And that sort of became the customary sentencing recommendation that a lot of the judges went along with. As I said, some of them didn't, but she was happy to sign off on that at least 9 more times after she, of course, got her way, because it's what Beryl Howell does.
I want to remind people she was an aide to Patrick Leahy for 10 years before being appointed by Obama to the court. She was the chief judge of the district court system there. She also ruled and seized Donald Trump's attorney-client privilege and did it in a secret proceeding with a secret order. She also ruled that Donald Trump was a flight risk, so she did not allow him to be informed that there was a search warrant put out for his Twitter information. And you also have the current judge, what is her name, Chutnik, or whatever the hell her name is?
Tanya Chutkin, she's handling
Chutkins. She ruled that Donald Trump's executive privilege doesn't apply. So all the privileges and all the due process rights and so forth that apply generally, if you're a mass murderer or whatever, were not applied to Donald Trump, and are not applied to most of these people. Most of these people did nothing violent, correct?
No, the man who I discussed in Judge Howell's tirade was inside the Capitol for 10 minutes. I mean, I believe the same is with James Little, who was the appellant in this court ruling. I believe he was inside for 10 minutes. None of them were charged with violent crimes. Most of these people have no criminal record, none whatsoever. They didn't even realize they were breaking the law because, of course, they were going into open doors, and some Capitol police officers were standing right there. So they didn't realize that they were committing this petty offense that would ultimately destroy their lives, bankrupt them, brand them as a domestic terrorist, which is what the state DOJ has done, and then be the subject of excessive, unlawful sentences from these D.C. judges. You know, Mark, I call Beryl Howell the tumor of the malignancy of Washington, D.C. Everything that has gone wrong in that city, the weaponization of the DOJ, cannot happen without her imprimatur, her 7-year reign of terror as the chief judge, handling the Robert Mueller special counsel investigation, and now both the January 6th and classified documents case that was investigated in Washington, D.C., switched to Florida at the last minute, precisely so DOJ and Jack Smith could get the rubber stamp that they got from Beryl Howell, that they have gotten for years. And so this is why I call her the tumor. She is the tumor of the malignancy of Washington, D.C. I wish House Republicans would start impeachment proceedings against her. Because
well, she's on what, senior status now?
No, just her. No, she's a regular judge, I believe. Her term, there's only a 7-year term as chief judge. I'm sure she was very reluctant to give up that power to James Fosberg, another Obama appointee who's not doing much better job. But nonetheless, she's wreaked a lot of havoc in this country, piercing attorney-client privilege between the president and his attorney, and calling him a flight risk in a non-disclosure order.
What do you make of the 30-year sentence they seek for, what is it, the head of the Proud Boys or something?
Yes.
Tell us about that. 30 years? I mean, I have to be honest, I watched this show, The First 48. I'm hooked on that show. And you see guys, drug deals, they kill 2 or 3 people. Maybe they'll get life and sent. You know, it depends. or they kill somebody, they'll get 20 years with probation or 30 years. Talking about 30 years? What did this guy do? Do you know? Are you familiar with this?
Yes, I covered the Proud Boys case extensively. I went to the trial. I covered a lot of the motions.
But this guy for 30 years, what did he do?
He wasn't even Washington, D.C. at the time, Mark. This is Enrique Tarrio, the leader of the Proud Boys, who was not even in D.C. on January 6th, convicted by a D.C. jury of seditious conspiracy, along with 3 other co-defendants who also committed no violent crime. They brought no weapons to the Capitol. They didn't assault police officers. Convicted in no time of seditious conspiracy. And now Matthew Graves, the D.C. U.S. Attorney and DOJ, asking for 33 to life for Enrique Tarrio, Ethan Nordine, Joseph Biggs, who is also one of the men convicted of seditious conspiracy. Mostly First Amendment case, movement of these individuals, making plans to go to Washington, D.C. There were at least a dozen FBI informants run into that group who were stoking. I just have new video posted on my Substack from last week. An FBI informant who committed multiple crimes as he was embedded in the Proud Boys. He has not been charged. But this is all optics because the government tied Donald Trump to the Proud Boys. And they want these sentences to make headlines. They want to punish these men for being loyal to Donald Trump, and they want to send a signal, which I still believe Jack Smith is going to bring seditious conspiracy charges against Trump, that this will be the consequence. They did the same to Stuart Rhodes. They asked for 22 years in prison, and they're asking for even more for the Proud Boys.
And Rhodes got what, 17, 18 years?
I believe the Judge Maida, imposed a 19-year sentence. And get this, Mark, the DOJ is appealing Judge Maida's sentencing, appealing his sentencing because they want the full sentencing recommendation of 22 years for Stuart Rhodes.
Sometimes I just don't know what to say. I mean, when you have a corrupt judiciary, there's no way out. There's no way out. That's why Stalin and all the rest of them, and Putin, they control the judiciary, they control the outcome, they control it all. And you take your political opponents and you crush them. And look, I remember when the Supreme Court ruled about Skokie, Illinois, and there's the Nazis who pick a predominantly Jewish community, and they march down the street, and they are defended by the ACLU, and they're defended by the civil liberties groups and so forth and so on. It just amazes me. And the same Democrats who broke their asses to get freedom for the Puerto Rican independence groups that committed acts of terrorism against the Capitol building and the Weather Underground and Obama's buddy who was involved in that organization and that group, they bombed the Capitol, they hit the Pentagon, they were trying to hit other places and so forth. And even Julie, you have the effort by these BLM and Antifa, thugs, trying to break through the fence of the White House, injuring God knows how many uniformed Secret Service have to rush the president down to the bunker, the nuclear bunker. You don't even hear about that as an insurrection where they're trying to decapitate 1/3 of the government. I don't ever hear of it. Do you?
No, all of those charges have not only been dropped, but Matthew Graves, the same D.C. U.S. attorney who is still rounding up J6ers every single week, negotiated a civil settlement between BLM rioters who were suing Park Police and Secret Service for using excessive force against them. Matthew Graves basically blamed police for those riots, told them to shape up and learn better ways to manage mobs and crowds. And this is the same guy who wants 14 years in prison for someone who allegedly sprayed pepper gel at police officers on January 6th. There is no fair application of justice in the nation's capital. And that should alarm, to your point, Mark, everyone, regardless of your political views, that this is happening in our nation's capital that has such contempt and vengefulness, revenge and retaliating against people simply because they protested Joe Biden's election that day. And the judges,
you talk about impeaching hell. I have a better idea, actually. I think, my humble opinion, I have no problem with that. and I'm going to say this out loud so they're listening to me, the Republican leadership, particularly in the House, the entire judiciary under the Supreme Court is created by Congress. They pass these judiciary acts. They need to break up this cabal of judges in Washington, D.C. They need to move jurisdiction for many of these so-called offenses, or certainly these areas of public life, to other parts of the country, so you cannot concentrate all this in one place where the ruling class literally rules from the judiciary. And the courthouse of which you speak is right across the street from the Department of Justice and right near the FBI. This has to be broken up so that you don't just have Democrats and pathetic Republicans, but mostly Democrats with pathetic Republicans, making rules like this for the entire federal government and treating people like this. Do you agree?
Absolutely. They should dismantle the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office, the D.C. Federal Court, and the Washington FBI Field Office. They are rogue agencies who work dependently with each other on nothing but political cases that have nothing to do with Democrats, of course. You have Matthew Graves, remember, the D.C. U.S. Attorney, who told David Weiss, no, I'm not going to pursue tax charges against Hunter Biden. This is the same Matthew Graves who did that. The same Matthew Graves has a 67% declination rate for violent criminals in Washington, D.C. He handles both local and federal cases in the nation's capital. He's the only one who does that. He's ignoring what's happening in Washington, D.C., descending into violent chaos every day. So he can continue to round up, paraders or people who he says committed obstruction of an official proceeding, working hand in hand with Washington FBI Field Office and this D.C. District Court led by Beryl Howell and now another Obama appointee, James Fosberg.
And they're lucky to get that decision out of the circuit because, as you know, Obama and Reid, when he ran the Senate, they added seats to that circuit, and it's now a fairly liberal circuit, whereas before it was pretty solid. So they must have gotten pretty good judges on that panel, no?
Well, Justin Walker, I believe, is a Trump appointee, and the other judge, his name escapes me, but the dissent was I believe, either Clinton or Obama judge.
Figures.
Who tried to figure out how this was legal, right?
All right, Julie, thanks for everything. We'll keep monitoring what you're doing, and God bless you, my friend.
You too, Mark. Thanks so much for covering my work.
Well, it's a pleasure. Trust me. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Chris Christie says he's not running to be a commentator on cable. No, he was a commentator on ABC News. Remember that, Mr. Producer? Nobody takes this slob on. Nobody. He said everyone's afraid of him, afraid to be. We must have asked that guy 10 times to come on this program. He is such a coward in real life. I'll tell you the truth. And Ramaswamy, I got to say, now there's this piece in ABC. Pitched himself to a group of conservatives early on as a candidate who could make serious waves in the Republican primary at his meeting. When met with some skepticism, he argued that his candidacy could also dissuade Governor DeSantis from entering the race, according to a source on the call. In the lead-up to his announcement, he would tell several other conservative activists that he believed that if he ran, it could stop DeSantis from running or impact his viability as a candidate if he did enter the race. And you can see the sycophants in the media. Sycophants in the media, including TV and radio, including some of my friends or acquaintances. That's exactly what they use him for. It's exactly what they use him for. So something pretty weird's happening there. Just being honest. I call them as I see them. That's what I see. Please go over to Amazon.com. You can save a whole lot there. 40% off. First edition, pre-ordered copies of The Democrat Party Hates America. You're going to wish you did. Maybe you'll acquire it at a later date and say, gee, I should have taken advantage of that. I wish you would. Please do. Grab your copies now. It's not too far away. Amazon.com. The book's going to be out in about 3.5 weeks. We're going to be ready to roll. I want to salute all you great folks out there, all you patriots, I want to thank you for listening. I am blessed very much by you, and I will see you right here tomorrow. Take care.